Okay, wonderful. All right, so good morning. I am Miss Hall. I'm one of the school counselors here at JP Stevens. So today we are going to go over dispelling myths and rumors, common things that we have heard from our students, and we'll be dispelling those rumors so that you can have a clear picture moving forward as you plan your students' high school progress. All right, so on the agenda, we have our counseling and mental health support information, JP Stevens myths, general college admissions myths like extracurricular and volunteering information, enrichment and summer programs, ranking, majors, recommendations, grades, and cost/financial aid myths, all things that we will dispel, rumors that we will dispel for you today. Few housekeeping things before we begin. This presentation again will be recorded and it will be posted at some point on the JP Stevens website. Please keep your video and your microphone off. We will answer your questions at the end of the presentation. We'll leave some time to answer your questions. So if you don't mind, you can put your questions into the chat. And once the presentation is over, Mrs. Nadel and myself, we will go over your questions that you asked in the chat. All right, so counseling and mental health support. So it is normal, completely normal for your child to experience stress, anxiety, and even temporary, keyword temporary periods of depression. So it's all about learning healthy methods to reduce the stress and how to cope with difficult situations. That's all a part of your child's development. So as school counselors, we are here to help with those things. So if your student is experiencing that, it is important for you to reach out to your child's counselor. So in school, again, your student can talk to the school counselor. They can fill out a form in our office. They can email the counselor if they are feeling, upset. If they are upset in that moment, they can come down and see one of us. We do have PATH counselors here. We have a partnership with Rutgers Behavioral Health, and they serve students that have a higher level of concern. The conversation starts with the school counselor, and then the school counselor may refer that student to PATH. They are our on-campus therapists. We also have a Zen zone, which is a quiet place for students to decompress in our office. They can stop by and ask to use it. Outside of school, we have a digital Zen zone where we have resources for meditation, mindfulness, and more. And then there are community resources. You can call our office for that information. All right, so
sorry about that.
Good stuff, what we are here for. JP Myths is our first slide. Oh,
sorry about that.
Okay. So the 3 myths that we will go over in this slide. Volunteer hours. So the myth is volunteer hours are required to graduate from JP Stevens. No. There are no volunteering requirements to graduate from JP Stevens High School. This is something that we hear all the time. There are no volunteering requirements to graduate from JP Stevens. So next myth, the number of extracurricular activities that you do is important. The more clubs you're involved in, the better.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Actually, it's quality time and involvement over the quantity of clubs. So that means that what you invest in those extracurricular activities is what is important. It doesn't have to be 20 activities that your student is doing. It is the time that that student is inputting into that extracurricular activity is what matters to colleges. Getting a job or having a job during high school is a bad thing. Actually, Having a job while in high school demonstrates that a student is developing many important skills like responsibility and being able to work as a member of a team. The student is getting a real world experience by having a job. So it is actually great if your student is able to get that job, not just in the summer, but during the academic year as well. These skills will be useful for the student in the future, you know, when they're applying for internships when they go into high school. Okay, so having a job during high school is great if your student is able to balance both. We can go on.
Keep hitting the wrong thing. Sorry.
Don't worry.
There we go.
Okay, so JP Myths about AP courses and exams, my favorite as the AP coordinator. So the more APs that you take, the better. Taking 3 to 5 APs plus other required classes is easy and won't be too stressful. What did we say about this? So remember, AP courses are college level courses. Each course has a comprehensive curriculum that the teacher must cover before the AP exam. The course teacher does not create the exam. So the exam is created by College Board, but that teacher must cover everything in order to prepare the class for the exam. So the teacher is going over everything that encompasses that course, but everything might not necessarily be on the exam. So whereas a college professor can choose what to cover in their class, they can create the exams and choose what they want to focus on. Okay, so like if that student decides to take that class, like let's say AP Bio in college, the professor is the one that's creating the exam and then going over during the course of the semester what's going to be covered on those exams. In a nutshell, there is a lot of work involved with taking multiple AP courses, which can be very stressful for students. So we are saying that no, the more APs that you take is not better. Next slide.
Just to reiterate, we will answer questions in the chat. Please put any questions in the chat and we will answer them at the end of the presentation.
So we're going to continue with this because this is a big one, right? So more about AP courses. Self-studying for AP exams gives a student an advantage in the admissions process. What do we think? Colleges use a student's transcript, which has the courses a student has taken in high school when reviewing an application. No AP scores are reflected on your student's transcript, which means that colleges do not consider AP exam scores in this part of the process. I will repeat it again. Colleges do not consider AP exam scores in this part of the process. The AP test score is usually used for granting credits and course placement once a student is admitted to a college. So once your student is admitted to a college, that college will evaluate the AP score to see if they will give that student college credit. There's no magic number when it comes to how many AP classes you should take. What matters most to colleges is that you take the most rigorous curriculum available to you at your high school while maintaining a strong performance. And I will repeat that as well. What matters most to colleges is that you take the most rigorous curriculum available to you.
We actually provide information on our school profile that explains how our AP courses, the AP courses that we offer. So that information is available and colleges know what courses we offer and how what APs students can take.
All right, so some JP myths about colleges. Some schools will recalculate your GPA, so your GPA does not necessarily matter. What's the truth about that? Your GPA is a factor and is a component of the holistic review that a college will use when reviewing a candidate's application. So when we say holistic, we mean that the school is looking at the student as a whole. So inclusive of their GPA and the other things that encompass their application, like their essay, their teacher recommendations, their extracurricular activities, those things are part of the holistic review. So it's not just about your GPA. It is about the student as a whole and what they are or what they can bring to that college. So another myth, you need to take computer science or a business elective in order for colleges to admit you to those majors. What's the truth? Students don't have to take courses in the area that they plan to study in college. However, it will help the student decide if he or she is really interested in the field. Finding out that a student doesn't like a field is just as valuable as finding out that they want to pursue it. So that means that no, your student does not have, if they want to major in computer science, they don't necessarily have to take, a plethora of computer science courses, but it does help the student themselves decide whether they are interested in the field. So taking the appropriate prerequisite courses for a specific major and doing well in those courses is what is necessary. And that is what we're referring to as far as being in college is concerned.
A couple of examples of that. NJIT is looking at students who do well in math and basically have at least a B average in their math courses is an NJIT prerequisite that they're looking for. Rutgers, if a student wants to go into the School of Engineering, they want students to have taken at least pre-calculus and have physics as a course if you're interested in going into engineering. Those are the kind of things that are important, not specifically taking those specific computer science courses if you want to go into computer science.
Exactly. All right, so this one is a new myth that I have no idea where this one has come from, but that is why it's a part of our presentation today. J.P. Stevens is blacklisted from Columbia, Barnard, Brown, and Stanford. JP is not blacklisted from any school, no school. We actually have students this year graduating in June that are accepted to Columbia and Brown. And in the last 4 years, students were accepted to all 4 schools. So no, we are not blacklisted from any school. That is not a thing that happens. That is not true. If you are not in the top 10% of the class, you can forget about getting into the STEM programs. So many valedictorians don't get into the most competitive colleges, and this is because colleges with acceptance rates under 20% have more applicants than the seats they have available. Therefore, most students who apply will not get accepted. Colleges have institutional priorities when they are making admissions decisions. Some things they share and others they don't. So for schools like Columbia, Barnard, Brown, and Stanford, those acceptance rates are well under 20. They're well under 10. Okay, so not getting in doesn't necessarily have to do with your student. It's what the school is looking for.
Next slide.
Yeah.
Okay. Oops, I'm going to move you around.
Okay, so more about colleges. Getting as close to a perfect SAT or ACT score will ensure that you get into a top college. What's the truth, Mrs. Nadel? So since the pandemic, many colleges have changed their SAT, ACT policies, their standardized testing policies. For some, submitting test scores is optional, and some colleges do not consider standardized testing at all. Many colleges are in the middle of studying the results of these policies and will decide if they will go back to requiring the SAT and ACT. So they're doing some research now. Many colleges will continue their test optional policies for the 2022-2023 admission cycle. So next year, if your student is a junior, all 8 Ivy League colleges, the state universities in New York, the city universities in New York, Rutgers, Penn State, Seton Hall University through 2026. Those are some schools that are going to be test optional. The University of California and the California State Schools are now test blind. So test blind means that they do not consider standardized testing as part of their admissions process. So what we're saying is that no, Getting as close to a perfect SAT or ACT score will not ensure that you get into a top college. If we went back to what we talked about before, we talked about a holistic review. The schools are looking for or are looking at your student as a whole. They're looking at everything that they are bringing to their everything that they're bringing into their application, not just one particular thing. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Mrs. Nadel?
Just that things like, for example, another school, Boston University, only 43.7% of the applicants indicated they're interested in having standardized test scores, because test optional means you can choose to. So if you are above the mid 50 percentile of the admissions numbers for that school with regarding to test scores, then you send your test scores. If they are below those numbers, you want to have a conversation, you want to think about it, and could you have a conversation with your school counselor or one of the college counselors to discuss whether or not you should submit your scores to that specific school. And it's very easy to send scores to some schools and not send the scores to others, depending upon what your profile looks like in comparison to the profile of that school and the admitted students' profile of that school.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Basically, what's actually the case is at this point, I think the number is something like 1,400 schools are going to be test optional for next year already. Others are still making those decisions. As we get more information, every day, more and more schools are making that decision to continue the test optional policies and are reviewing that as a possibility to continue, whether they will bring back testing or not. And it basically depends upon your child's profile, whether that makes sense for that student to submit their scores or not.
Mm-hmm. So there's more, of course. Test scores are just one element of the application package, is what I mentioned previously. Many schools will weigh your curriculum, grades, and writing ability heavier and as stronger indicators of potential success in college. Your SAT or your ACT score places you in a college applicant pool. Admissions officers will dig into your academic transcript. They will dig and dig and dig. Classroom grades and performance are of greater interest to them once you're in the pool. Colleges will accept either SAT or ACT scores. Either. Okay, you don't need to take both. Taking both is actually a poor use of your time. It is better to spend that time dedicated to your extracurricular activities or your school work. So extraordinary SAT or ACT scores may help, but they do not guarantee anything. SAT and ACT scores, extraordinary scores, do not guarantee anything.
As a matter of fact, high SAT or ACT scores do not make up for a lower GPA when you're applying to colleges, because you're talking about 4 years on a transcript of school versus a 4-hour test. So that the transcript is much more important, and what's on your transcript is much more important. Your classes, how you've done in those classes are much more important than how you've done on a standardized test.
Exactly, Ms. Nadel. We're looking at 4 years as opposed to 4 hours, okay? Moving on, extracurricular and volunteering myths. What do we have about those? So here's a couple of myths, okay? In the red, we have a huge list of extracurricular activities is essential and is impressive to admissions representatives. The more clubs and activities on your resume, the better. You need to have an impressive list of extracurricular activities and community service. So you guys understand where we're going with this. What's the truth? Quality versus quantity. Again, I said this before, there is no magic number of activities that will get you into a college. There is no specific activity that colleges are looking for, because, I've heard this as well. Students have come to me and said, I'm going to do Model UN because that looks great for colleges. Not necessarily. You know, there is no, again, there's no specific activity that a college is looking for. They want to see you involved in your JP Stevens community. That is what they're looking for. They want to see you involved. They want to see you dedicated to your school, because they want to know that when you are admitted to their school, that you will do the same thing.
Schools are looking for a passion. They're looking for your interest. They want to know what you're interested in. So doing a lot of different things doesn't really have a focus, doesn't put you in a focus you. You want to be focused on the things that are interesting. Why? Because if you're interested in something, you'll have a lot more to talk about and to continue to discuss with them. A laundry list is not what they're looking for. And there is nothing specific that any college is looking for you to do. There's no way to say, well, if I am a flute player, I will get in because the flute player got into school X last year. And therefore, this year, the college may be looking for somebody who's a saxophone player, not a flute player. So it's really, there's no way to make sure what it is. It's about finding the passions, the students finding what they're interested in is more important in the process.
Colleges are looking for well-rounded students. Colleges are actually looking for a well-rounded class. Colleges list how many students and countries their students are coming from. Colleges are looking for diversity in their class, and not just diversity as far as race or ethnicity, diversity in activities as well. Like Ms. Nadel had mentioned a few minutes ago, you know, they might need that, you know, saxophone player, or they might need that person that is heavily involved in fencing. You know, we never know what the school is looking for in that year. Your best bet is to, you know, make sure that you're continuing to do well in your classes, continuing to be involved in your extracurricular activities, and dedicating your time to your extracurricular activities, finding what you're passionate about. That's what's important.
If you'll notice on any college's information packet, lots of colleges like to tout that they have students from all 50 states and 125 countries, for argument's sake. That is what we're talking about, a well-rounded class. They want students, they want that diversity of the student population. They're looking for that information, and that will help them in terms of having that well-rounded class of students that can bring a lot to the table to make that class have different aspects of that class. So it's not so much that they're looking for you to be a well-rounded student. They want students who are passionate about what they're passionate about, and following what you are interested in. And that way, if you are a person that fits their need, what they're looking for, it's going to be a match. Then, and that's going to work out well. So it's more important. It's not trying to figure out what the school is looking for. You want to find out what you are looking for and where you're going to do, meaning the student, what the student is looking for. What goals does the student have in that process?
Right. There's no key. There's no, what we're saying mainly is that there's not anything specific that you need to focus on. Okay. You need to just do what you're supposed to do as a student, you know, have your student do what they're supposed to do as a student as a whole, not just one thing, not just we're going to do very well in SATs, or we're going to, you know, take all these AP exams, you know, it is everything.
Next slide.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Family responsibilities aren't extracurricular activities. They don't count. Actually, colleges want to know how the student spends his or her time outside of the classroom. Family responsibilities are absolutely considered. Watching your younger siblings or taking care of an older relative while parents are working is an activity. If that's your story, that's your story, you know? So they do count if that is something that's happening. I'm not saying that for you guys to, you know, make that up. Like, yeah, Jimmy was, you know, taking care of his brother this whole time. You know, if that's the true story, that's the true story, but it's not, there's no point to make that up. All right. Volunteering is essential and super impressive on application. Colleges like to see students giving back to their community. Volunteering can be a good extracurricular activity. Remember, it's about the passion, not a laundry list of volunteer sites and hours. So when students come to me and they're like, Miss Hall, I have 50 hours here and 6 hours here and 15 hours here, like that doesn't matter, okay? It's the passion, not the laundry list. If you spent 4 years dedicated to whatever, right? That is what is essential. Pursuing an internship just for the sake of adding another line or item on a resume is one of the easiest ways to waste your time and summer. In addition, having interest makes you interesting. So if you are interested in painting, or if you're interested in, I don't know, collecting cars, that makes you interesting. That gives you something to talk about. There is no requirement. Oh, again, there is no requirement to do volunteer hours in order to graduate from JP Stevens, okay? There is no requirement.
Okay, I'm going to take over the starting of this part, and we're going to start talking about enrichment and summer program myths. Okay, so a paid summer programs boost your application. Another one, these are some of the myths. Doing a summer program at a highly competitive college will help you get into that school. An expensive summer program is better than an inexpensive or free one. And the answer, summer programs are not golden tickets. I repeat, are not golden tickets to competitive college applications. As with most things, what a student gets out of the experience is what really counts. If a student has to pay to participate, it doesn't mean it'll help them get into a school. And the other thing I've had students in the past go to schools and take summer courses at certain courses, spend a lot of money and take courses at Harvard, at Columbia, at Cornell, all kinds of places. And then they applied to those schools and they wondered why they didn't get into those schools. Because not everybody can afford to do a summer program. If you can afford it, it's a great enrichment activity. It's wonderful, but it doesn't mean that you have to do the program there. And just because a program is at a certain college campus does not mean it's connected directly with the college. There are a number of colleges that rent out their campuses over the summer to summer programs, and they're not even connected with the college other than the fact that they just happen to be using that location. So therefore they think that it's going to help the student get in. A lot of people think that, but it doesn't really do that. What you want to do with summer programs is you want to take summer programs that are interesting to you. You can determine whether or not it's something that will help you in your future. Paid programs doesn't impress a college that you paid for a program. And sometimes I've known families who've spent thousands of dollars. Some of the programs are $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 to do. And they really can't afford it because they think it's going to help. It doesn't help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's really important to think about that. We post, by the way, a number of programs on our website. I post a lot of things, from things that are free to things that are that $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. That's up to you to make that decision in terms of whether that program's good. If you look at the program, a summer program, as an enrichment idea to check out to see whether or not your child is interested in that field, that's what the program's for. If it will solidify the student's interest in something, or it will say, "Ooh, the student will say, "Ooh, what was I thinking? I don't like this." Mm-hmm. It's better to find out before they go into the school and major in that, decide they're going somewhere to major in something and decide they don't like it. It's better to find out early if you can, but you shouldn't spend thousands of dollars to do it unless you can afford it.
Right. So don't expect it to substantially increase your chance of getting into and your chances of getting admitted to that school is essentially what we're saying. It's good as an enrichment experience, but don't expect it to increase your chances of getting into that school. If you're doing a summer program at Columbia, don't think that, oh, I did a summer program at Columbia, so I'll get into Columbia. Not true.
Oh, there we are. Oops, I just wanted the two of us. Hold on. Okay, let me move us up actually. It's not working. Okay. Okay, let's talk about rankings, ranking myths. This is one of my favorites. Okay. Colleges ranked the highest are the best colleges. Another one. Best college lists from magazines and articles are the best way to choose a college. It's important to it's become increasingly harder to get into college. The more famous the college, the better.
Wow.
Okay. And the truth is, the reality of the situation is, there are only about 65 out of over 3,500 colleges nationwide that reject more applicants than they accept. Okay. And those are those highly, so everybody's trying to get into the same schools, which is why they're not getting into, some people are not getting into schools. Among the remainder, there are still many excellent, well-regarded institutions. There's a lot of schools you may never have heard of that are phenomenal. It's your character, not the name of the college that you attend, that will help you stand out in your community and in the job market. And I always say, it's not about where you go, it's about what you do. So when students come to me a lot of times and ask me, they say, I want to go to these schools. I want this is my list of colleges. And I go, well, how'd you come up with your list? And we talk about how they come up with the list that they came up with. And basically, it's a good school. I want to go to a good school. And I go, good, what do you mean by good? And they go, eventually we come out and it's a ranked school. And I go, well ranked. So it's basically, did you look at one of the rank reports somewhere? Did you Google something and say top, best schools to study this, or it's an Ivy League? And I go, ranked according to who, based on what? What is the criterion that the college is using, that this magazine is using to determine that? Are those rank lists are somewhat subjective. They're not really, they don't really measure what's important. What's really important is what kind of learning is going on. What's the student going to learn at that college? That's more important. The methodology that's used on these lists are very subjective. And how do you know if it's going to meet your needs in terms of whether that school makes sense? Someone says a school's highly ranked. I always say, by who? Again, according to based on what, according to who, and what's the criteria that they're using? Most students don't have an answer to that because they haven't gone beyond looking at the list to know what the criteria that's being used. The other thing also, rankings, sometimes you encourage you to take out, for you as a parent, it might encourage you to take out more loans, because I'll find a way for my student to go to school X because it's a really well-ranked school. So you can go into a lot of debt for that. Your child probably can get as good, if not maybe even better, education at another school that might not be as expensive for that. So it's really important to think about that. Rankings don't think about how much debt you're going to incur in the process, and your child's going to incur in the process. Mm-hmm. The other thing also that's really important is, I don't believe the rankings really. It's a financial sacrifice for you. Most important is that the school your child attends is what they do when they're there. What experiences are they going to have? What exposures? Are they going to have opportunities for internships, summer jobs, who's on campus, research opportunities at the college? It's not the name of the school, it's what they can do while they're there. What activities, what clubs and organizations, because there's a lot of things that go on outside the classroom that are going to make them very marketable in the outside world. Because isn't that what we really want for our children? We want them to get a good job when they graduate and have a good future. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily the name of the school that causes that.
Right. A part of having finding a school that is a good fit is understanding your student. Where will your student flourish? And so when we say it's not about where you go, it's about what you do. Where will your student flourish? Where will they get involved? Where will they want to be involved? Where will they be able to speak to professors and get different opportunities or take advantage of different opportunities? What will they be doing on campus while they're there? Because they could very well, go to Harvard, And if they get in, they can very well go to Harvard and do nothing, just take the classes, and they won't be as marketable as somebody that put their all into a school like Seton Hall University. You know what I mean? The jobs are not looking at, okay, you went to Harvard, but what, they're like, what did they do? They went to Harvard, but what did they do when they were there? That is what's important.
Now, when another point with regard to the ranking lists and looking at rankings, it's a great starting off point for creating a list of schools. Why? Because you want to, like, you can look at, okay, best ranked schools for, I don't know, engineering, okay, whatever it might be, the major would be. Okay, so now you have a list to start with, but you don't stop by looking, and these are the only schools that I'm going to apply to. That's a place to start when you're trying to figure out, do they have schools that have finance, schools that have nursing programs, whatever it is. Generating that list would be a good idea, using that to start, but it's only a starting point. It's a tip to start there to give you some suggestions of places. Then you need to go beyond the numbers and the ranking and begin to look further into the programs and what opportunities would be appropriate for your son or daughter, and also whether or not it's a good fit, as Ms. Hall said, and as I said before, whether or not the program study, the learning things, the things that the way they teach the courses, the class sizes and so forth, all those further detailed information about whether a school is the proper school for your son or daughter. That's how you make that list. That's what you do. It could be, you can use those best college lists as a start, but it shouldn't be the end all be all. There's only one perfect school for me. You should go to the most famous college that accepts you. Interesting. There are so many great schools and colleges and universities in the world. It's unlikely that you've heard of all of them. Just because you don't know it doesn't mean it isn't great.
Right.
Just because you haven't heard of it. We've all heard of the same 35 schools, 40 schools. We all can name them all. We can all probably name most of the Ivy Leagues and the top and those schools that are considered highly competitive. But that doesn't mean anything. Every year, the results show that more than 75% of freshmen get accepted to their first choice school. Not if they're all applying to the same 65 schools though, okay? Don't be afraid to explore different options, different places. Investigate a wide variety of schools out there. It's fine, to have one preferred school. I'd like to go to this school, but it's nothing wrong with having a list of top 3 or 5 or 6, and then you have to finalize. Right now, we're dealing with the seniors and they're coming in and asking questions like, I've got it down to 2 schools. I don't know which one I should choose. So then we talk about what they're looking for. What's the best option for them? And then we go, you've got some thinking to do, some soul searching to decide which is the best school and best fit. It's basically looking for where the students is the best fit for that school to look for.
And I want to go back to that. Every year, the results show that more than 75% of freshmen get accepted into their first choice school. This is if you are following the advice of your school counselors and your college counselors. If you're sticking into, those lists of target, safety, and reach, if you are following the advice of your school counselor and the college counselors, you'll find a school that's a best fit for you. But if you're doing your own thing and you're following the advice of other parents, Jimmy got accepted to Princeton because he was in band for all 4 years, things like that, this may not be something that happens for you. Okay, so we're all about finding the best fit. And that includes, finding schools that have things other than what your interested major is.
Just to go a little further into best fit. So things to think about when you're thinking about the best fit of a college, okay? Does the way in which the information is presented to the student, does that fit the learning style of your child? Is your child going to do well in large lecture halls, or is your child going to do better in a smaller setting, smaller class sizes? All schools are going to have small class sizes once you get really high up into your major, because the courses get smaller as you get more specified into specifics of the major and the program. But the intro courses, they want to be in a class with 400 other students. And or how will they do in that situation in terms of that? So do they want to be at a big school or a small school? Or what size is going to fit me best? Is the size, the class size, and the size of the school, the student population of the school? Do they want it to be an urban school, suburban? Maybe they want to be a place that's out in the country somewhere, more of a rural environment. Okay. It's a sense of fit for them, not just a name of a school. And is it a good match for my students' needs and what will make them happy? Because regardless of anything else, if your son or daughter isn't happy at their school, I'll tell you right now, if your child's not happy, you're not going to be happy. And you don't want to have 4 years of your child not being happy, because that will make those 4 years not be very pleasant for you either. Because we all want our children to do well.
4 years is a long time.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about some myths with regard to college majors. Okay. You need to know your major before you apply. My major will determine my career success.
Oh.
You need to know exactly what to do when you grow up before you be in college.
Oh.
And college itself is a time to grow and explore. Most colleges and universities do not require students to declare their major until their second year, till the end of the second year at college. Because at the beginning of college, you're taking what's called general education courses, and maybe you're taking an intro course to the major. And basically you're fulfilling graduation requirements for the college in those first couple of years. Then you get into the major in more detail. So you don't necessarily need to know. And a lot of times students have taken a course in an area that they hadn't expected. It was one of the gen ed courses, and they fell in love with that area and say, wait, what was I thinking? I love this. This is okay, but I love this. Or, ooh, I don't like that. Whatever subject area that they think they're going to major in. So most courses require the first 2 years to do those general education courses, as I said before. Approximately 70% of college students change their minds on what they want to study in general. Now at JP, when we have alumni come back to talk about and to meet with our students, I always ask at every single alumni day, it's one of the questions I always ask alumni, how many of you have changed your major? And every single time, at least 30% have raised their hand and said they changed their major, what they initially thought they were going to study. So it's not necessary for a student to know exactly what they want to study when they apply to college. Okay, and that's really important.
College affords you that opportunity to figure it out.
And as a matter of fact, the major a student studies in college does not necessarily have anything to do with the career that they actually pursue along the way. They may, and the job that they get along the way. So it's very possible that you studied one thing. You could have studied, I know lots of people who studied biology who are doing something in business and marketing now, or communications, that they're not even studying what they studied in college at all, what they majored in. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to study, it's going to set your life for the rest of your life. Plus, because of the changes in technology and how fast things are going these days, there are going to be many, many careers and opportunities that don't even exist, that didn't exist. Think about things that didn't exist when you were thinking about what you were going to do with your life, and how many new careers are out there now that didn't exist. If somebody was to tell me when I was a kid, I'd be carrying a little computer in my pocket, like my cell phone, I would have said they were crazy, or I would have been like, oh, that's a sci-fi thing. So from a sci-fi movie. So all of that is different as well. Things that haven't even been created yet are things that your children will need. So they're going to need those general education courses. And employers, many times in a previous life, I worked dealing with employment related stuff, and employers would come in and talk to us, and they said, we just want to make sure that the employees that we hire can learn. They don't have to know the skills. We'll teach them what they need to do on the job. We'll teach them those things. We just need them to be able to think, to write, to speak in clear sentences, and have basic skills. And we will teach them the rest. College will give them those skills that they need and to learn the specifics of the job. So going forward, recommendation letter myths. The more recommendation letters, the better. Only ask for a recommendation from a teacher who gave you an A. Get those VIP recommendations early. That's really important. Or is it? The more recommendation letters isn't necessarily better. As a matter of fact, most colleges have a limit to the number of recommendations that they will accept. And admissions staff, the people who are reading the letters, they only have a certain amount of time to look at an application. And if there's more letters, they're going to spend less time on each of them. They're probably going to skim some of those letters instead of actually reading them in more detail. So more is not necessarily better, which is why we say students should ask 2 teachers, okay, to give them a letter of recommendation. So too many recommendation letters is not necessarily better. Choose 2 teachers who know you well, who can talk about who you are, your relationship to them, how you are as a student in their classroom. That's what they want. Okay, don't ask a VIP, a congressman, or a CEO, or members of the college board of trustees to write a letter of recommendation, unless you actually work with that person and really know them in a substantial way. Okay, colleges really want teacher recommendations. They want to know from your teachers what kind of student you are in the classroom. Okay, they want to know how you are as a student with your classmates, with everyone in the class, as well as what are your strengths? What are the areas you grew in? So it's not necessarily the teacher who gave you the A, it's the teacher that you maybe have to struggle a little bit to get that B in, because that teacher can see your growth and can talk to that and can speak to that, as opposed to the class thing that came really easy to you. Ms. Hall, you have anything to add?
You did it. Thank you.
Got it. Okay. Let's talk about grades and the myths about grades. Getting a couple of bad grades will ruin your chances. You should take the easy class to maintain a high GPA. Getting A's in easier classes is better than getting B's and C's in more challenging classes. Let's find out. Nobody wants to get a C in a class. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to affect you getting into a good college. More important is that you've demonstrated improvement in the areas that you previously struggled, established an upward trajectory. That's why that teacher recommendation from the class that you struggled to get the B in might be a great teacher, because that teacher can see your progression, the upward trajectory, the importance of how you've improved and the things you put in place to improve your grades in a class. Their admissions representatives look at classes available in your high school. If you sailed through getting perfect grades in the least challenging courses, they'll know you didn't really try so hard. You're just worried about numbers. It's not just about numbers. It's about doing well and working your way upward. Now we're going to talk about costs and financial aid. Some myths about that. Only students and families who have high financial need should submit the FAFSA. Asking for financial aid always hurts. Private schools cost more than public schools. The college with the lowest published price is the most affordable. Interesting. And the answer is, there is no automatic income cutoff level for financial aid. Many variables are considered. Many variables are considered. Many institutions consider students for institutional merit aid based on filling out the FAFSA. It's required for schools. Okay, submitting that FAFSA is important because many schools without completing it, will not consider you for merit-based aid if you don't qualify for need-based aid. Okay. And look, life, we all learned through this pandemic that life can turn on a dime. If you don't submit the FAFSA, it's going to give you options. What happens if something happens? Someone loses a job. If you don't have a FAFSA on file, then you can't be considered for financial aid. If something happens along the way, life happens. You need to be prepared. So submitting it, having it available is always a good option, that just in case. I'm a firm believer of prepare for just in case. Okay. Every college is required by federal law to have a financial aid calculator. It's on its website. These tools help you to understand how much financial aid your family will probably receive from a college. That way you can kind of get a sense of what's going to cost you to go to each college, whether or not that college is within a budget that you put together. And by the way, it's important for you to have conversations with your sons and daughters about what you can afford. Why is that important? Because I would hate for your son or daughter to fall in love with a school and you just can't swing it. You just can't figure it out. And you shouldn't be taking money out of your retirement account, putting second mortgages on your house and all that to pay for schools just because it's got a name. Just because a college costs more doesn't mean it's a better school. There are many factors that go into the cost of a school, including other aspects. And just because a school is a private school doesn't mean a public school doesn't mean that it's going to be cheaper than the private schools. In some cases it is, but not always, because the colleges themselves have institutional money, merit money that they can give you possibly if your son or daughter is there. And sometimes the school where your son or daughter is on the lower end of their applicant pool, they're not going to get any merit money. But if they're on the higher end of their applicant pool, the chances of getting merit money are greater. So it's possible that your son or daughter can get merit money from a private school or a school that the sticker price is higher, and actually make the cost of that school lower than a state school or a public institution. So with that being said, the truth about it all, the whole in a one slide presentation part, your child should focus on the things that matter to them most. Colleges look for students that have demonstrated commitment, growth, and intellectual curiosity. Students who would be a good addition to their college community. Try not to look at the costs, at least initially, at all costs initially. Look at the academic offerings, the quality of the student life, the extracurricular opportunities, the summer jobs, the internships, the research opportunities, the special programs that school might have. Some schools have 5-year master's programs as part of their situation, where you could save money by them going for a 5th year and getting a bachelor's and a master's in 5 years instead of taking 6. Finding the right college isn't about finding the most or least expensive school, nor is it about the reputation or the rankings of the school. It's all about finding the best fit for your child. So with that being said, we are pretty much going to now go into answering questions. So what we're going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and therefore so that we can actually open up our chat and go from there and see what the situation is and look at that. And we're going to go through the chat and start looking at that. Thank you for coming and being part of this presentation. I
don't see any questions in the chat. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to answer? You can put it in the chat.
I have them. I'm going to go through the questions. Okay.
Oh, you have some. Oh, sorry.
Let's see. Actually, let's see.
I don't see any.
How do you get a recording of the session? Okay, but we're going to talk about that. This session will be posted on the counseling webs page of the JPS website probably by tomorrow. So it's probably going to be up there by tomorrow. It's on the JPS website. If you go to the counseling tab on the JPS website, it will be posted there. Okay, let's see what else we got. Okay. All right. A question. If a student If a student declares their major when they're applying to a school, can they change their major after the first year? Absolutely. There are schools that won't even allow you to declare a major before you apply. Everybody comes in as undecided, but a lot of schools don't do that. A lot of schools say, pick a major, pick an area that you're interested in. Absolutely. And yes, can you change your major after you've applied? Yes, depending upon the school and how it's set up. What I would recommend students do is if you're applying to a variety of majors, you have majors, the one that has the most, you can discuss with us which majors they should apply under to start and then go from there. Certain programs out there, some nursing programs, you have to be a nursing major immediately, and you have to declare that as you apply, because otherwise you can't get into the nursing program. There are programs like that, but absolutely. So yes, you can change your major in most cases. Oh, okay. You mentioned getting 2 recommendation letters from teachers. What about guidance counselors? Can they provide a recommendation? Absolutely. If the school requires a school counselor recommendation, there's a process when your son or daughter is a senior that your child's counselor will explain the process, and we'll go through the process, and you will get that information as well, because we have evenings for the parents to learn about the process as well. It starts in junior year and it goes through senior year, where we explain all that process. I don't know what year you are talking about, your child is, but absolutely, that is definitely the school council will provide a recommendation if that is necessary. Absolutely. And there's forms that are filled out in the process. Okay, when is the FAFSA due? Every school, when is the FAFSA due? FAFSA stands, by the way, for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And that's a federal form. And financial aid, the FAFSA federal money goes with a student wherever they go to college. The FAFSA opens on October 1 of the student's senior year. That's when the actual portal for the FAFSA opens to fill out. Every school will have a deadline date when a student is applying that they have to complete the FAFSA by. It's usually, and so I'm not going to give a specific due date, but every school has a due date with it. So part of the process would be for your son or daughter to create a spreadsheet of making sure that everything is done. In terms of, and one of the things is the application due date, as well as when the due date is for the FAFSA for that school. And that's should be part of the spreadsheet that the student does, and they submit the FAFSA to the schools by that time. And it gets submitted to multiple schools, can be submitted to multiple schools. Okay. Okay. Good question. If a student is on a visa, will they be able to fill out the FAFSA? The answer is no. The FAFSA is for citizens and basically and permanent residents. So if a student has a green card, they can fill out the FAFSA. You cannot fill out the FAFSA if you are not a green card holder. If you are an international student on some sort of a visa, the answer is you do not fill out the FAFSA. What is the due date for the recommendation letters? The due date for recommendation letters, there's a process. Again, we'll explain that to the student. It's basically the recommendation letters from teachers for teachers. Basically, once the student knows the school that they're applying to, every school has a different due date in terms of when the application is due. So as a general rule, having the recommendation letters completed by the due date, they can be submitted by the teacher by that due date. So the student will tell the teachers when the recommendation letters are the due dates of those for the application for that school, so that the teacher can make sure. You obviously have to give the teachers enough time, as well as the counselors enough time, and to complete those recommendation letters. I'm not going to go into detail about that. Ms. Hall, do you have anything you want to add?
We go over all of that during junior year and senior year as well. So we will give you more solid information about that and that process during that time. But normally the recommendation letter goes out with the rest of your application materials before your first deadline, before your first school deadline. So again, we'll go over that in detail. You won't be left out, you know, just make sure that you're attending junior parent night and senior parent night, and we will have that information for you more specified for that year.
Okay, next question. How much does work experience count? Jobs such as working in a supermarket or a restaurant or something like that. Do you want to take that, Ms. Hall?
So like we mentioned, right? Work experience is just like extracurricular activities. There's not one specific thing, as we mentioned, that matters more than others. The schools are looking at your student as a whole. So if your student works, great. That is a part of their extra activities that they're doing outside of school. Okay. So to answer your question, it counts just as much as everything else.
Similar question. Basically, a student, what's being asked is basically academic related, are academically related extracurriculars more important than doing things like marching band or other kinds of activities? The answer to the question is no. What the colleges want to know is how your son or daughter, if you look at it this way, how your son or daughter spends their time outside of the classroom, whatever it is they do, whether it be an extracurricular in school, out of school. So students do things, whether they do volunteer, how do they spend their time volunteering? If they have a job, if they have to take care of a younger sibling, as we said in the presentation, how they spend their time outside of the classroom. That's what's most important.
So again, there is not one activity that is better than the other. Okay. So I know like you want to know like what does my child have to do to get into these schools? There's not one activity that is better than the other. If your student wants to do marching band, they can do marching band. If they want to do an academic extracurricular activity, they can do that. If they want to do both, they can do that. You know, it's the schools are looking at the student as a whole.
Okay. Another question with regard to, this one's about volunteer hours. Person now understands that there's no need a graduation requirement for volunteering at JP, but for college applications and admissions into college, do you need to do volunteer hours? The answer is no.
You don't need to do it.
Don't need to, and there's no number, and no college is going to require it. It's part of the whole package. If your son or daughter likes to do volunteer work, they should do volunteer work. If they want to give back, absolutely, by all means do that. And they should do some because it says they're a member of a community. However, is there a number that's required? No. Is it something that should be the whole lots and lots of hours? No. Is it part of it? Yeah, it can be. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. I know that doesn't make it clear, and there is no magic formula for this process. I wish there was. It would make up my job a lot easier.
And we would be rich. We just give out the formula and make big bucks.
This is a great question. Excellent question. When should I bring my child to visit colleges?
Spring break.
Anytime you want to, when they're ready to do it. You know your child, son or daughter. If they're a freshman, you know, what's interesting is that vacations. So if you happen to be taking a vacation somewhere or going somewhere over the summer, or you just happen to be going down to Washington, D.C., go look at a couple of schools down in the Washington, D.C. area, or Virginia, or you're going down to Florida, or you're going someplace, and you happen to not to intensely go look at schools if they're a 9th grader or if they're a 10th grader. Begin to look at schools, have them get a feel for it. My suggestion with regard to visiting colleges, on a weekend now, here's something, because you want to talk about the fit of a school. So here's the thing. Nothing wrong with the biggest school in the state of New Jersey is, drumroll, Rutgers. Go take a look at the New Brunswick campus. Do a tour. Do that on a weekend. It's local. You can do it on a Saturday. Set that up. Have them take a look at the school and see the 5 campuses, and they have to take the buses around to the different campuses on the New Brunswick campus. Have them go to, say, NJIT or the Rutgers Newark campus to see the difference in terms of how the campus is set up. It's more of an urban campus. It's more of walking around a city, so forth. Have them go see Seton Hall, 6,000 students in a self-contained campus. Have them see a smaller campus. These are things you can do locally on a weekend. Have them go see Fairleigh Dickinson or Drew University, small schools under 2,000 students. on the campus, I'm talking about the Florham Park campus of, um, of Fairleigh Dickinson or Drew University, to kind of get a sense of what a small campus looks like and how it feels. So they can kind of then move forward in terms of figuring out a list of what their interests are in terms of what kind of campus environment they're looking for. And then if you're going on a vacation, you're going to Boston, go take a look at some schools in Boston. But don't make it a major trip until the junior year, kind of. And even at that point, plan that out to go visiting schools. That's kind of how what I would do. And I suggest that all the time to people. We're going to take a couple more questions. Otherwise, what we'll do is we'll respond back to folks. We'll post some of this information after. We'll do a couple more questions because time is going by here. We're here over an hour already. Okay. Interesting question. Interesting statement. It appears it's a game of luck. I don't know if it's a game of luck, okay? Since there is no sure shot way, neither a good GPA or SAT, not any specific extracurricular will necessarily help get admissions to a school of choice. That's not really true. It's not a game of luck. For those 65 schools that we talked about, when the admissions rate is under 20%, yeah, those really highly competitive schools, it's not a game of luck. It's what that school is looking for. Some of the things we'll know, some we won't. But remember, we said 75% of the students get accepted to their first choice school, or so the point is, if everybody's applying to the same 60 schools or 30 schools, yeah, then it's a game of luck. But if everyone finds the school that fits them and fits those numbers. That's why a reach schools that are you're below the numbers for, schools that your profile is in the numbers for, and the schools that you will probably get into that are more on the safer side, that you're above the numbers for, in terms of what your student's profile looks like in terms of that. And having a balanced list of schools to apply to will not make it a game of chance. I mean, it is a game of chance possibly for those highly competitive, no matter who you are. Unfortunately, that is the case. Valedictorians don't get in with 1,600 SAT scores, don't get into Ivy League schools. Just that's the way it is. There's no way to prove that.
And you have to keep in mind that, like, the admissions counselors again are looking for, they themselves are looking for specific things. Okay, so when you're talking about luck, it's like an arbitrary thing that happens. There's nothing arbitrary about the admissions process. Okay, the student has to fit what the school is looking for, period. As long as your student fits what that school is looking for, then that admissions counselor makes the decision themselves to see what that school is looking for. It's not necessarily about luck. They have to fit what that school is looking for.
Okay, a question. Does an AP class not strengthen the fact that the student took college level a more challenging curriculum? You want to take that?
Yes. So yes, AP classes are the most rigorous classes that we have here at JP Stevens. The classes, yes. Now you have to separate the class from the exam. The exam itself is, the college evaluating whether or not they will take the credit. The class, yes, shows rigor. But if that is not available to you, that does not put you at a disadvantage. If you are not at that level, if you're not on that path to get into that, that's not a disadvantage to you. The colleges are looking for looking at the fact that, what is available to you as a student, not just what we offer, but what is available to you. What path are you on?
Okay. Let's see what I got here. We're gonna do another 2 questions. So let me just look through, because I've got a lot more, and like I said, we will post responses of to these questions. In addition, Ms. Hall and I will go through the chat after and kind of answer questions and get answers to these questions, since we can't answer them all here. This is always an interesting question, which we get quite a bit. Do you need to hire a counselor outside to help you go to your dream school? I'm going to answer this way, the question this way. If you want to spend the money to get a private counselor on your own, that's your choice. The district, the Edison School District has college counselors and school counselors who are all well-schooled and knowledgeable about colleges. So it's really your choice whether you want to spend your own money to do that or not. That's your decision. I will tell you the answer. If any counselor tells you, a private counselor tells you they can get you into your dream school, don't believe them. Things that are too good to be true usually are. No one can guarantee you can get into a school. Don't forget there was a whole admissions scandal about private college counselors 2 years ago. That's the big scandal that happened a couple of years ago for admissions, trying to get people in by to get them into their dream schools. And the wealthy were spending lots of money to do that. If you want to pay for somebody who privately, all the counselors have a caseload that they have to deal with, and therefore can't give your son or daughter undivided attention. Okay. And those private college counselors can cost a lot of money. It's up to you whether you want to spend your money to do that or not. But anyone who says they can guarantee you can get accepted to a school, I suggest you don't believe them. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation with a parent this year whose son did not get into some schools that they thought they would get into. And I said, well, what was the list? And they said, this is a reach, this is a target, this is a target. And I said, I would not consider those schools to be targets for your son, targets for anybody, because they had any school that's under a 20% acceptance rate is a reach school for everybody. So I don't know why, and that person did not say that. So I would also check the credentials of the person who you were hiring as a private counselor.
And with the school counselors and the college counselors, we have a great idea of our own students and the school itself, the extracurricular activities available, the classes that are available. We know the ins and outs of our own school, and that's helpful, because the schools are evaluating the school as a whole, so.
Okay, I think that's pretty much about where we're going to stop it now, because we've gone an hour and 15 minutes. We want to thank you for coming. This presentation has been recorded, and it will be posted on the counseling page of the JPS website. Probably, like I said, maybe before the end of the day. We just got to have time to get it up there. If by the end of the week, it definitely will be up there. We will respond to any questions that we have not answered, and make sure that we'll put that information for some of the questions we didn't answer on the website as well. We want to thank you all for joining us. Normally we'd say thank you for coming, but thank you for joining us and taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. Ms. Hall, you have anything to?
No, thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Have a great rest of your day. I'm going to, please log off. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to end the presentation.